Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you for joining us. If you have a chance and you want to prepare for the test, the answers are down below, and those are links to YouTube and our Gumroad page for the cheat sheets on how to pass homeschooling. No, I'm just
And one more plug for our Talk at the Library.
Homeschool Together!
Yes, and the June 21st, City of Snohomish Library at 2 p.m., we will be giving a talk on starting out homeschooling, but if y'all want to come and just chat, I love chatting homeschool. I'll chat homeschool all day long. So
that's right.
come chat with us.
It's going to be
share your stories.
It's going to be an intro thing because we know it'll be a good time for a lot of new families who might be interested in homeschooling.
Absolutely.
But also if you want to show up, and we can do Q&A stuff and take some information from the crowd and everything, and that'd be awesome. Yeah,
we're gonna have a great presentation with all kind of the overview of homeschooling. So yeah, especially if you're new, definitely come to it. Yep. Even if you're not, come say hi,
come
chat.
Yeah.
We need a good showing, so help us out.
Yeah, we'll head over to the Pilchuck drive-in and get a burger afterwards. The locals are like, I know that place. Anyway, so today we are continuing with our testing extravaganza. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about today is preparing for the test. And, there's so many things that we can do to help our learners prepare for these exams, whether it's state testing, some type of standardized testing for like maybe a high schooler. But if we are also thinking about maybe doing our own types of assessments for math and whatnot, how do we prepare our students for that? Even if they're early learners, like I know with our Right Start Math, we have been doing review and final tests and assessments. I think each level for the last, 2 or 3 levels has had maybe a dozen assessments throughout the whole chapter. So if we were thinking about like developing assessments for our kids and trying to get them to showcase their mastery of whatever concepts that we're trying to teach them, these things are going to help us as well when we're preparing them for that. And also cultivating good practices, because a lot of these like preparation work for the assessment is directly related to, like, for example, getting a big project out of the door for, a health company or whatever. If you have a big product that's going out, or if you're trying to give a big presentation at a marketing event, or you're trying to get a new product out the door, you have to do prep work to do that. And these skills are directly related to our professional skills out in the real world.
They are.
And so we can see and if we can kind of maybe articulate that to our young ones and say, I know this seems weird that we're doing this, but these are good skills to have for you to prepare for any type of big thing that you have to do.
Right. It's not just preparing for their future standardized tests, which they will have to do as they kind of progress through high school and things. But yeah, you're right. It is good to learn these techniques. And as a working professional, I've taken...
Is that what you do?
What have I taken? I've taken 4 standardized tests in my professional, kind of post-grad life. And so it just because, maybe they've already taken an SAT and, we want to do that again or whatever, you definitely could, as an adult, need to take, a variety of different kinds of standardized tests. Even if they don't go to college, that's not their path. Mm-hmm. It is good to understand this. So the first thing is to create a study plan. So what's your structure and routine going to be around that? So when I took my SAT for the first time, I didn't quite get a high enough score to qualify for the state scholarship that I was trying to get. And we were poor. So I needed that state scholarship or I wasn't going to be able to go to school. So I went ahead and I got a book. So I did what we talked about last week. I got an SAT prep book, and I made an entire plan for a whole summer that I was going to study before my senior year so that I could make sure that I could take this test and I was going to get the score that I needed. Yeah. So I made a plan every day. I took the book apart and I said, okay, let me break it down into manageable chunks of this. Of course, all these books are like, they're
doorstops.
It's the old phone book, which our kids are like not going to know.
They don't know what a phone book is.
Yeah, they're not going to.
There may be people on this podcast that are listening going, I don't know what a phone book is.
Well, yeah, they're not going to, but that's, I remember this book being just like dunk, when you put it down the table. So I broke it into manageable chunks. And then I put together a study schedule that I thought was realistic. This is what I could do over the summer. So, okay, I have this many weeks or whatever until the next test date. I already signed up for it. That was, I think, a real key. Is I had a hard deadline.
Something to work towards.
Yep, you had something to work towards. So I set this timeline for myself. I reviewed the areas that I planned to take more time on the areas I felt I was weakest in. Of course, I didn't know exactly, but I was like, I have a feeling these are the ones I felt shaky about. So I did that, and I created this whole plan, and it absolutely worked. And every day, or I don't remember if it was every day, it was a few times a week, I put this study time in. I chunked my way through the book. I did that again when I studied for my professional engineering exam.
So this is a good question. So I'm going to take the other side of the house. This is like the Oxford debate here. You're the person in the middle, and I stand and rise, and I say, dear Ariel, I take the procrastinator side of this aisle as a world-class procrastinator myself, who is trying to be rehabbed into being a better person. I'm a world-class procrastinator. How did you approach that? Like, that seems, for me, it's like I'm a cram and dumper. I am I just try to memorize it and try to get through it and that type of stuff. How do you get yourself, like, I watched you do the PE thing, and I was like, I could never do that. It's just so much work.
I spent like 4 months I spent 4 months going through every night, just studying.
It was wild. And
I created like 8 binders of material. It's one of those exams, if you've never heard of the professional engineer exam, it's an 8-hour exam, and you bring in an entire like luggage rack of books, and you can bring in all your notes. And so I had like
that's
8
how you
binders
know how hard it is. Like, they're like, bring whatever you want.
Yeah, you can bring a luggage trolley with you. And your lunch, and you're there the entire day. And I had to take it twice because I didn't pass it the first time.
Yeah.
So I did that 3-month thing twice.
Yeah. Like, what
it was horrible.
Yeah, I know it was. But what was, like, how did you get yourself through that? How did you, you said you created this schedule, and you sat down. What was what was the impetus? Like, I would just put it off. I would always just keep putting it off. How did you like get your butt in the seat and do the work?
Well, so we talked a little bit on the last show about how you're a really anxious test taker.
I am.
I'm an anxious person.
Yeah.
I don't need to take a test to be anxious.
Sure.
So I am more about like, I want to know that I'm completely prepared. Yeah. Because that will make me anxious. So I'm like, I got to be prepared. I got to know what I'm doing. I've got to plan it all out. If I don't have a plan, I'm never going to make it. And spiral, right? So whereas you're like, I'm going to wing it till the last minute, and then I'm going to sweat bullets the whole time until I get my score. I would never make it through the 3 or 4 months ahead of the test if I didn't prepare. So it's a fundamental difference between us because of that. But this is the way that I even approached things in college, right? I had a week schedule up, a whiteboard in my dorm room. And when I got an assignment, I would plan out the steps. Oh, I have to read a chapter, and I have to write something. Oh, that chapter's really long. Okay, I'm going to read half the chapter this night and half the chapter the next night, and I'm going to write the thing the third night. And I would plan it. And as I got new assignments, I would add them. And every night I had a plan of a study plan, and I had to execute it. I had to check all that off my list before I could feel calm and satisfied that I had done what I needed to do. And that's just my personality style. So for your personality style, I think
what you just described is the equivalent of a superpower. Like
this is why I think anxiety is a superpower, right? And it makes me really great at my job. And it sucks when things are quiet and calm and everybody's just hanging out. Like my body and brain doesn't work with that.
Sure.
I need to be going. But I think for somebody like you, being accountable for it, right? So, you can talk with somebody like me and say, hey, I don't naturally gravitate towards this. What do you suggest? And then somebody like me can help you put together a plan because we love to plan.
Yes.
We love it.
We loves plans.
Yes. Precious. So, I could help you and say, okay, and you've got like 5 more tests coming up this summer. So we could do this.
7 more tests.
Oh, right. We could do this to help you prepare for these teaching exam questions, tests. And we could say, hey, let's put together a reasonable study schedule so that you aren't anxious going into the test. I already reserved books for you at the library. I was the one. You don't even have to take these tests for like months. I was like, hey, let's see if the library's got you a study book. And you're like, okay. So we already got it, right? So all we need to do is look at it, chunk it up into sections, make each of those a week, and then set a goal, and then have an accountability partner, which will be me, to say, hey, how's that coming? But I mean, there needs to be some amount of intrinsic motivation too, right? So that's the thing when you're creating this study schedule. If you've got a really young child, then you're going to do what you're doing, right? You're going to give her 2 pages of this study study book to do every day as a warm-up activity before we do the rest of our homeschool. She's not setting the study plan. You are. But if
it's funny. I'm a way better teacher.
Yeah, you are. It's very funny.
that I am a student.
And you get so, and here's what I think is really funny, because you went on this rant today about how she's not practicing her dance enough because the teacher who, anyway, said she wasn't practicing her dance enough. And you're like, she never wants to practice. She never does her stuff. And she's like, I don't know. I do it at the last minute. And I'm like, oh my God, that's your dad. You got that from your dad. So you're like, you spent all this time complaining today about her. And I'm like,
I'm looking at myself. I'm disappointed in myself, Ariel. I'm projecting.
I know. Because I was like, she's doing just what you do. Just wait till the last minute. And you're like, she always just waits until the last minute. And I was like, oh, okay. I kept going, she's 9. It's okay, right? But you were like, I'm just tired of having this conversation with the teacher because she waits till the last minute. She won't practice unless somebody forces her. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything because looking at you. So anyhow.
This spot has been brought to you by genetics.
Right.
Disappointing you all the way down.
But at some point it's going to catch up with you, because she's starting to show early signs of my anxiousness. She's going to have a little bit of both of this to contend with.
Oh, she's doomed.
I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, right? So who knows? But
who will win out? Procrastination or planning?
I don't know. The great genetic experiment.
Yes.
So when you've got a really little one, you're the one setting this routine and you're the one making it a regular thing. And I think it's easier if it's a regular thing, just like working out or doing anything or eating habits. It's a habit. Yeah. You get into it. So if you can do that for your kids rather than just springing this big thing on them, that'd be great. Break it up into some chunks. But if you're dealing with like a high schooler that's getting ready to take their PSAT or SAT or ACT or whatever, then this is going to be a bit more about being intrinsically motivated to do it, not motivated to take the test, motivated for what the test will provide, right? The test is going to provide the ability to get a scholarship. The test is going to provide the ability to go and study that thing I'm passionate about. So I think if you
that's a great
clue
point.
into that, you can help your teenager to get on board with test prep.
Yeah, that's a term that we hear sometimes. Like, I think in some of the martial arts they talk, or boxing, I think they talk about this. Don't stop at the end. Punch through the thing, right? Keep the power all the way through. Working on volleyball serving with my youngest, I'm like, don't stop at the end when you hit the ball. Go through the ball, right? You want to go through it and let them know.
I love how it always goes into a sports metaphor.
That's all I
think
know,
we need to put that on our bingo card, our 2025 bingo card.
Matt, with a sports analogy. Oh.
Yeah. I love them all. I just think it's funny because I was like, wow, because I think we got through the last one without a sports analogy.
This complicated life issue can be boiled down to a sports analogy.
I just didn't realize until now how much you do that. That's really cool. I love it.
Yeah, there's a few stay-at-home dads listening to this going, I get every one of those sports analogies. But let's go through that. That's right. I like that idea.
Follow through.
Where it's not the test isn't the goal. The test is a key to get to what you really want.
It's a means to an end.
It's a means to an end. You're trying to blow through that thing and get to the other end. I like that analogy. I really
think
do.
that will help teenagers. And really, honestly, isn't that what we're doing? At some point, right, they're really young. We're teaching them and they kind of just like, they take whatever you want, right? They eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
Not food because they're all picky, but subject wise, they'll kind of they take a certain amount of it until at some point when they go, why do I need to know this? Why do I need to learn this? Which this has already come up for us. I'm sure it's come up for you all. And that's the point where, again, we have to say, hey, you need to know this because of that thing you really want to do later, because you want to grow up and be this kind of person. Our oldest wants to be in marketing. And so she's like, oh, why do I have to do this reading stuff? Well, if you want to be in marketing, this is what you're going to have to do.
You have a plan, yeah.
You have to have a plan. Hey, that book on your shelf you really want to read, you got to, learn this so that you can then get to that point where you can read these amazing books. And so I think this is the same kind of thing, showing them what they're going to get out of this, which is frankly a crummy experience to have to take a giant test, right?
Well, and speaking of crummy experiences, you should join us at the Snohomish Library for using these tests effectively can help build stamina, tests. Right? Because you think about it, like, it's not only just you're learning how, you're preparing for this test. It's like walking, right? Mm-hmm. Sports.
You can't help it. I love it.
I can't help it. Like if somebody says, "Hey, I want you to run a marathon," like nobody's going to go run a marathon, right? You're going to say, "Okay, you got to run a couple miles. You got to keep building up your stamina." Taking these tests is very similar to it, right? If you ask your young one to sit down and say, "You're going to take a 90-minute test," and they're going to look at you and go, "How many blueies is that?" It's like, it's 10, right? It's like they could sit and watch a movie, but sitting there taking a test, that's going to be a lot. And just sapping their energy from, with all the brain cycles and everything, it can really gash you. I mean, after I took that 5-hour test, I was done.
I remember you were texting me and you're like, "Can I call you?" I literally, my eyes just can't
focus on the screen.
Can't anymore.
And I'm not a big person who complains like that. Like, I know there's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, it's just, today's been such a tough day." And I'm just like
you get this from your mom. You could have
I'm a bull and I'm going right through the china shop.
Right. And you could come back the next day and not be able to move your arm, but you got through the day. I mean, you're one of those people. I have to watch you.
If it ain't bleeding, I keep going.
Right.
But that was, I don't think, maybe it's because I'm old now. I don't know. But like, I legitimately felt gassed. I was like, I gotta go. I can't even look at the screen. I can't look at anything. I just gotta get home. I was gassed, and I can't imagine what like a 9-year-old is gonna feel like after taking a standardized test for the first time.
Right. And so I think you're doing your routine practice, but then you do have to decide, at what point do I use practice tests? Mm-hmm. You're only going to have so many practice tests, and you're not going to want to do a bunch of them, certainly. You may only want to do just one practice test, just so they at least have that experience. It's not a totally foreign experience to sit down and know this is what it's going to be like to take this test. But use them really effectively. Mm-hmm. You could start with an untimed practice part where they could, just focus on understanding. If you want to do multiple rounds and then gradually get to some place where you time them on it. Mm-hmm. This would be maybe more applicable if you're talking about, older tests.
Yeah.
If you're talking about
SAT and that type of stuff.
Yeah. And I remember there was a whole series of tests I had to take in Florida to graduate high school. So you may have things like that for state requirements that you have to pass a state test to do. I don't know if our state has the same.
I don't think
we're not there yet. But so yeah, you might start with like untimed stuff, and then start with timing, review mistakes really carefully from the test so that you can give them good feedback and kind of watch the testing process too. We're going to talk all about test taking strategies next week, but once you've listened to that and you've learned those, then you can kind of evaluate how they're taking the test, and you can ask them later, which strategies did you use and not use? Mm-hmm. Did you feel like you were running out of time? And really kind of take a temperature of their emotions too coming out of the test. How did they feel during it? And because that's some of the test taking strategy stuff that you're going to have to work on too. Yeah.
Now, I think another big thing we've talked a lot about already, maybe we'll just touch on it, is building that confidence and reducing that anxiety. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things that helps younger students is familiarity. Because I don't think with our younger students, elementary age, that they understand the weight behind these things. They don't understand the gravity behind a lot of the things we're doing. They just kind of like, they're fish in the water type of thing.
Right.
And they don't understand that yet. So really what the thing that they feel is this pass and failure type of fear. And so being familiar with what they're doing, I think helps to make them calm about that. We see this a lot of times with our oldest, once she gets into something, she's uncertain about it. It's unfamiliar, like, doing the play, right? The first few times that she did the play or she went and was helping out, she was very nervous and anxious because she was unfamiliar with where she could go,
Sure.
what she could say, what she could do. But then once she gets one or two, experiences, one or two practices, all of a sudden she blooms like a flower and she'll go and do whatever, right? It's that familiarity that we see with our younger ones that I think helps alleviate a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. And I think that would help here as well with these types of tests.
Yeah, and we've been talking about these larger standardized tests, but in general, assessments is a really important part of what we do as homeschoolers, and even just regular tests, even if it's just the little test at the end of a section for Math Mammoth. It doesn't have to be this grand, big standardized test. It could just be the small things, and just regularly assessing. Even those and all of those smaller tests help them feel more comfortable when they get to larger tests. I know that there's some kids, and I've talked to parents before, who their kids just have extreme test anxiety, and they don't even do the small assessments that come with the curriculum like that. And I think that can be just a real challenge. And then if that's the struggle you're having with your student, then you're going to have to start real easy, and it's going to be a lot of positive affirmation that's focused on progress, not performance. We're not grading this. This is just for us to see where you're at so that we can see what it is we need to focus on learning before we go on to the next thing so that you feel comfortable. It's going to be a lot of
chunking and breaking things up. And I think a lot of times you may have to stretch out that assessment over multiple times. You may have to even code it within review. As sort of like, hey, let's review this thing. Oh, could you do this one problem? Oh, you did. Great job. And you're like, boom, that's one of the questions that was on the test, right? I've had to do some of that before where I'm having a kind of code assessment or code it within review so that she doesn't feel that pressure. Like we just we're at the end of math, Right Start Math, and she took a test and we were at the gathering room and she had her headphones on. She didn't have her headphones. It was really loud. She didn't do, a very good job. And I was like, she was set up for failure.
it probably wasn't a good time.
Probably wasn't a good time to do it. And it was all on me. So we backed off. I said, hey, we'll finish this tomorrow. But I noticed a few things where she was just like spacing on things I thought she should know. And so today I told her sister, hey, go upstairs and, play for a few minutes. I got to work with big sister here. And I was like, okay, I want you to specifically go through this with me. Do you understand this? Yes. And then I would give her like 5 example problems that I just made up right there. And we were doing I was having her calculate what a quarter of something was. Like, what's a quarter of 100, right? Well, we have a method. We can go half, right? 50, 25. Great. Now you got the answer, right? And then we were doing what is 1/10 of some number. And we were talking about shifting decimal places. And then, now that you know that, what is 7/10 of that number? Well, that's shift the decimal place, multiply by 7, right? That type of way of thinking. I was just like, I know you know this, but you did not show me that before. So let's review this. And then I'm going to then give you some example problems. I want you to show me how to do it. Knowing this one example problem, show me these next 4 or 5. And I was kind of coding assessment within the review. And I think sometimes we need to do that to if you had a bad experience, let's try to do something a little bit different while also doing the assessment and trying to figure out mastery.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great to use it for review if you have to. And if you can even get multiple versions, so you've got one test that's just a review, just a practice, then you can go over those questions again, and then you can then do the real assessment. And kind of for score kind of thing, not really score. Although our daughter, it's funny, we don't do grades with her at all, but we do mark when something's incorrect, and we just ask her to go back and fix it. But she's always like, "What was the score?" Like she's the one that wants to, and we're like, "No, the grade doesn't, the score doesn't matter. It's just fix these couple. We want to make sure that you understand before we go on." And so we're always trying to put it in that frame. But she's the one that's like, "Yeah, but what was it?" So I'm like, that's a competitive. She gets that from you.
Yeah, she probably does. Then next thing we want to kind of teach is the time management. How do we manage our time when we first step into this assessment? A lot of times people just dive headfirst, right into the first problem. And maybe by the second or third problem, they get stuck and they burn some cycles, they're burning brain cycles when they should just move on or step back and assess, what am I taking? What is easiest? Can I attack that first? Good test taking strategies, but understanding your time management, I think, is really important.
Right. While you're prepping for the test, showing them, hey, skim through the entire test first, get a sense of your bearings, decide to spend more time on harder questions, strategic guessing when you need to, those type of test taking strategies. And we'll talk more about them in depth, but using this prep time is a great way to not just say, hey, when you do get to the test, do all of these things, but actually implement those things while they are preparing for the test and while they're taking their practice test. Because it's one thing to get in and say, well, when I go to the actual test, I'm going to do it this way. It's like, no, you got to practice that now on your practice test so that you go in, and when you're flustered and anxious and all the pressure's on, it's just like, oh yeah, I know what to do.
Yeah. And then kind of the last thing we want to do when we are prepping for this exam is to simulate the experience physically. Like, are they going to be at a computer? Are they going to be sitting down at a desk, in a room, quietly? Are they going to be allowed to have headphones to have a quiet environment? That was something that they provided for me on my test that I took. And I know my daughter likes it quieter when she does anything.
And she's actually started wearing headphones with nothing's plugged in, just to
dull the noise.
The noise, yeah.
And I didn't realize that may be something that helps me. I never knew that, and I know that wasn't something that was really offered when we were younger. That's more of a modern thing, and I've always kind of leered at them, going, "What's that for? It's a quiet environment already, that type of thing." But man, going to zero noise, they had the airline. Earmuffs, the guys on the runway or whatever, like they can't hear anything. I couldn't hear anything. It was I was just looking at a world, and it was just moving people, and I didn't hear anything except the beating of my own heart. And I was so locked into that test. And I'm kind of wondering if I've always had like an auditory issue with test taking, even just a tick of this or a foot moving over here might have bothered me, and I never even knew it.
And I know our daughter is really easily distracted, I'm sure that would be a problem.
She's
for her
going
too.
in with headphones, and I know our school will accommodate that as well. And they in my degree, they call these accommodations. These are things that are things we can do for students to help them in their learning style or learning needs to succeed in whatever they're doing, whether it's an assessment or even in just the regular schoolwork, that we can make accommodations for students to put them in the right situation that they can thrive and display their mastery on whatever it is.
And I think that simulating what they're going to do when you're doing a practice test is great, but also doing some imaginary kind of walk through of what the experience is going to be like. For those of us with anxiety, this is something that we do a lot of, which is just kind of it's like a rehearsal in your head. It's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So for example, when our daughter goes to take the standardized test at the school later this year, we're going to say to her, okay, so that morning you're going to get up and we're going to get dressed and we're going to have breakfast like this. And then daddy's going to take you to the school. And then there's going to be this room and you're going to walk in and you just kind of play act the whole thing. Just close your eyes. You kind of go through the routine, and doing that kind of mental rehearsal step is really comforting, because then when it actually comes to that day, it's kind of like you've already been there. You've already game planned it in your head. You already know a little bit about what to expect. And it really helps any kind of unknown situation feel more familiar. So I think that that's a great thing to do, especially for younger students or ones who are more prone to anxiety, is just to kind of do a mental walkthrough of what this is going to be like, so that they're really prepared as best we can make them. Because if this is something that they have to do, and we've known some teenagers that have had some severe test anxiety, and I think this would be just a great exercise to go through. And the other thing is doing a bit of work as well on imagining a positive outcome. And it's funny, I'm going to make sports analogy now. This is something that they do a lot in sports.
Affirmation.
This affirmation where they have the team imagine us winning. Imagine what this is going to feel like. Imagine being successful, right? And so I think we can sit down, especially if we have more anxious kids, and hey, imagine what it's going to feel like when that's all done for the day.
Yeah.
Imagine how great that's going to be. Imagine what it's going to be like to get the score that you worked so hard to get. Don't imagine and worry about all these things that could happen or what ifs. Instead, focus on, this is going to be successful, and here's what we can do to make it successful.
Yeah, it's actually something we practice, like I do with my girls on the sports teams. We practice victory. Like we practice a 5, 4, 3, 2 countdown as a girl is running down the court to make a layup, and the whole team running off. It doesn't matter whether she makes it or misses it. We mob her and celebrate her.
Yeah, and you do it at the end of every practice. Every girl gets a turn to be the one.
And I stole that, I think, from Rich Rodriguez when he was originally, the first time he was with West Virginia football team. This is way back. This has been like 25 years ago or 20 years ago, and more than 20 years ago. Yeah, more than 20 years ago, when he was there, I remember reading something like they celebrate victory. They celebrate winning the last game. They'll play the hell out of a call. They'll pass it to the end zone. It's the end of the game, and they all mob for victory to get the sense of feeling what that feels like. And the funny thing is, we had one of those in our basketball game at the end of during this year, where it was like 7 seconds left, and this girl, one of our girls, is beyond the half court, and she's dribbling down the court, and we're all yelling 5. It was like literally what we practiced, and she made the layup at the end. It was like at the end of the third quarter. It wasn't the end of the game, but it actually happened. Like the thing we practice, and we're able to follow through and do it. And I really agree with you, like visualizing those things. I'll steal another sports analogy. I know in golf, that was something that when I played a lot of golf, played in college as well. That was something we always thought about when we're getting up in front of a shot. And I'm envisioning what it's going to look. What's the ball flight path? How is it going to strike the green? Is it going to have enough spin to come back? And where's the wind? And how's it going to move? And I'm visualizing exactly what's going to happen. So when I walk up to it, I just do it, right? And it's that aspect of visualizing, manifesting what you're thinking about is a real thing. It's not that it's going to make it happen, but it makes you envision what it could happen. What are the things that are going to be necessary to get to that point?
Well, it helps build your confidence so that, you don't stand in your own way by your own nervousness about what you're doing and letting other things come and distract you. So yeah, these are just some ideas to help use those great test prep materials to actually prepare and be ready for the test that you're going to go into. So next week, we're going to talk all about testing strategies for those big important exams.
Got to know what to do in the thing.
Right. And that these are all skills that we can teach our kids during this preparation time so that when they go into the test, they're really ready to go.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!